Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to this third part of Meet the Cast. This is a live presentation brought to you from the Vestibular Disorders Association, streaming live on Facebook today. Today, we welcome you to this interview where we'll be talking with three cast members from the Rebalanced Chronicles. We're excited to have these guests with us today. Danielle, you're going to tell us more about them. And hopefully you guys were aware that today we launched the Relationships Rebalanced just a few hours ago that has now been premiered and is available to watch all over the world. So today we're going to talk to the cast, these vestibular warriors. And if you have questions, please include them in the comments. We'll be able to take questions from everybody, and we're just super glad you joined us.
I'm really excited, and I'm excited to introduce our last three cast members here for this live interview series. So first, I'm going to give you a little bit about each person, and then we're going to kind of dive into some questions and talk about Rebalanced Chronicles. So first, we have Nicole. Nicole is a Colombian-American artist based in Miami, Florida. Her signature series, The Colors of Sound, is a collection of fluid abstract paintings that explore the relationship between sound and life, inspired by her sudden unilateral hearing loss and experience with Meniere's syndrome. Through her paintings, she continues to illustrate her experience with sound and color, now in contrast, and how sound occurs in cosmic elements like pulsars and supernovas. Nicole has partnered with the Hearing Health Foundation and the Vestibular Disorders Association for several years, where she donates her time and art to benefit their fundraising and awareness initiatives. As a result of her work raising awareness about hearing loss and invisible disabilities, she was awarded the Leadership Scholarship by Americans for the Arts in 2018. Nicole's art has been showcased around the world, and she has been featured in several magazines, blogs, and other publications focused on fine art and hearing health. Welcome, Nicole. And I have to say, I still have my favorite Balance Awareness shirt with your Melodies painting on the front of that one. That was probably one of my favorite Balance Awareness shirts that I have to date.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very nice to hear. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you here. Next, we have Alicia, and Alicia is also known to many as the Dizzy Cook. She was diagnosed with vestibular migraine in 2017, which completely turned her world upside down. She went from being a fun-loving, world-traveling 30-year-old to not being able to leave her own house. She was newly married, and it felt like her life was over. It took months for her to find the right neuro-otologist, as well as the right treatment plan that worked well for her. But in the last 2 years, she has become stronger than she could have ever imagined. Through Heal Your Headache diet, vestibular therapy, key supplements, and ballet, she is back to living a life to the fullest. She started the Dizzy Cook, which is a fantastic diet and lifestyle website for those with migraine and vestibular disorders, as well as their families and friends. She shares recipes, tips, and blog entries detailing that has helped her get her life back in hopes that she can help others in a small or even a big way. Welcome, Alicia. We're happy to see you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And finally, we have David. David's vestibular disorder was caused by a stroke that knocked out the part of the brain that controls balance. During his recovery, he found himself struggling with constant dizziness and balance problems. He didn't really know where to turn to until he found Vita. He acknowledges that Vita helped him understand his disorder with a culmination of information and research-based resources that they've collected through the years. As time went on, he wanted to give back and focus all of his energy on helping to educate the public so more people like him could better understand this disorder. Now, David facilitates the largest vestibular Facebook group and remains a highly valued Vita ambassador. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone.
It is so great to have you guys. Well, listen, we have been able to visit with the other groups of cast members as well. And one of the first things I like to ask is, how was it for you when you saw the videos for the first time? Alicia, let's begin with you. You had submitted your videos independent of each other, and then when you saw them all come together, what was that like for you?
It's just really funny because even though we all have different vestibular disorders, there was such a common theme throughout all of them. And so it was interesting to hear that although we were in different areas of our lives, different ages, different parts of the country, we all had very similar things to say. And I guess I wasn't expecting it to be like that community where everyone was kind of experiencing the same things. And I'm sure at the time we felt very alone. But once you put them all together, it's like, oh my gosh, we're all in this together.
That's amazing. David, Nicole, any comments from you guys about how you felt when you saw the others for the first time?
I'll let David go first.
Okay.
David?
Okay, David. I was going to let you go, Nicole.
It's
sure.
okay.
So when I first saw him, what I sent to Kimberly was it seemed to me like a disjointed mess of comments that I put out there, and as I said to other people, for me, I had to come way outside of my comfort box to do something like this. I'm not a big video person or even filming myself, but I wanted to do it because I felt it was important. So when I saw the project initially, just my video, I thought, well, this is choppy. But I trusted Kimberly, and I sent that to her. And the final product, like Alicia said, is just an incredible. Basically, it seems like we're talking to each other, and we're all in the same room at the same time. So it was a very uplifting. What I thought was probably just a boring video that I had. It came into a very well-rounded series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Nicole.
To me, I've been very emotional. It made me very emotional. I thought I wasn't much of a crier, but I guess I am, because I would cry in every single video. And even when they would show us the teasers, I'll be very, it would take me back to the first days, which makes me incredibly emotional. And I think I would just feel their pain, it's like I was out of my body and seeing their pain. It was like, wow, it's very similar, just like Alicia said, just like David said, like it was a lot of me talking at the beginning, but then seeing it all together, it was like a lot of similarities and a lot of emotions going through my head and through my mind. It's just too much, to process.
So for those who might not be familiar, the Vestibular Disorders Association launched this docu-series called Life Rebalanced Chronicles. And we're looking at all the aspects of having a vestibular disorder, which applies to anyone who's had any sort of invisible illness. We look at the impacts on the body, the mind, the spirit, the relationships, the self, and then the life in general. Alicia, back to you were you surprised that your vestibular disorders had such a broad impact on all aspects of your life, or were you thinking that it was just in the physical body?
Oh, I know. I mean, I definitely knew there were impacts. I knew there were impacts for other people. I guess I just didn't realize like the commonality that we would all have and how similar we would all be in our experiences. But I knew that it was impacting other parts of our lives. Like I think relationships just got released today.
That's right.
And that was a huge one. Like I watched some of Sandy's comments last week, just a few parts of a screenshot of what she had said. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was me postpartum. That was how I felt. And she was like, oh, this was exactly how I felt with my husband too. And it's just been really crazy to connect with these other vestibular warriors on it and to understand, how much this affects outside of our lives, from relationships, from the way we view our careers, even career change. Like I had a huge career change because of my vestibular disorder. And so it's just nice to know we're not alone in all of this.
That's right. Nicole, for you, you talked about some of the feelings of isolation and frustration and maybe even anger with that. And it was quite raw in that. I mean, from Sandy's speaking, each of you share some very, very vulnerable parts of the journey. When you think about people asking, why did this happen to me? When you asked yourself why, did you get an answer? And do you think everyone will come to an answer about why this happens to them?
No, I think I never forget what a doctor told me once. It's like I was trying to make sense of all of it, and then they said it's like a hurricane that goes by a city, and then you get there and you see the destruction, but you maybe don't know you weren't there when the hurricane went by. So it's like I think I passed the point trying to find out why, but more like trying to get back into not my old self, because I think that's changed incredibly, and it has made me a different person in a good way. But I think like the why is no longer, what I want to kind of focus on. It's just like move on, and hopefully with this docu-series inspire other people who are either at the beginning of the journey or they're asking those questions, but now they don't feel so alone. Because for me, it was very isolating. I felt very alone at the beginning. I would cry so much because I had conditions that would alienate me. Like I couldn't get out of my house. And I know it's true for many of us, but I was completely lost at the beginning. I didn't know exactly what was going on with me. I couldn't find answers. And as I learn, as I go by, I think I've changed the perspective. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was something that was common to so many of you guys, to find yourself asking, why did this happen? Why me? Why now? We've heard it in many different ways. And then even feeling that sense of hopelessness and helplessness. Some described it as being on the couch, some as being on the floor. You described your tears. Was there anything you would say to somebody now listening that you wish someone had said to you?
I think like people try to either give you advice or try to like understand, but like I think they just need to be kind. A lot of people try to solve the problem. I think Alicia mentioned that today. Like men, for instance, they try to solve the problem, but sometimes it's just leaving you either alone or like letting you grieve because it's a loss. So I think you need to go through that process. And the people who actually were the best, those people who kind of, they are with you in your silence, if that makes sense. Like they can understand you, but without attacking you with comments or like every suggestion. I think like we needed time to decompress and grieve. And I think like I would say be your own advocate. And I think all of us, we were, like we had to look for answers. We went online, we went on social media trying to find answers, and people like us going through the same thing. But it's just, go with your gut feeling. And if your body is telling you something is wrong, I would never stop like trying to find answers, because I really wanted to get back to normal, or to being energetic again, or being social again in a way. So I think we're the best advocates for our own health.
I think that's true. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to kind of play off of Nicole. You said something really beautiful at the end of today's episode that I actually wrote down. One of your pieces of advice at the end was to come out of your shell and be honest. The people who really matter in life are the people who want you to succeed and will understand. I think that speaks volumes and says so much for people going through this journey, that, it might change your relationships with who's around you. And, David, you had mentioned during your video that this brought you and your wife closer together. Yeah. How has your vestibular journey affected your relationship with your wife? In what way?
Well, yeah. So for me and my wife, it actually did bring us closer together. Now, we also have a relationship of 40 years of marriage too. So, you got to compare apples to apples here. We've gone through a lot in our lives. And when we first had my stroke diagnosis and my vestibular disorder, we basically turned our entire family upside down. I was the main breadwinner and she stayed home. So that role switched. She was the main breadwinner and I stayed home to recover. So we really had to communicate a lot and talk and understand. And it was great for me because my wife had empathy for my condition. She understood it. We educated ourselves, both of us, and we kind of did this together. So, that's what I would recommend to any couples out there, no matter what age or how far into a relationship you are. Work with each other, see that empathy in each other, and try to pass that on to each other, so how they feel. Because For me, it was a little easier because we had a lot of history. So we already knew. She knew that if I was saying that I did not feel well, because I was one of the people that would never say I don't feel well. I did not go to the hospital until I'm a typical man. I didn't go until I really, really needed to, and probably too late sometimes. So, and then after this, I learned that I need to speak up and to let people know, and my family as well, as how I was feeling and if I needed to seek more help. So.
Which seems to go well with Alicia. I mean, comparing the two of you in your situations is comparing apples to oranges, because he's got 40 plus years of marriage under his belt, but yours came from the first year of your marriage. And that sounds like it was really scary to figure out, how that was going to affect your marriage. And you felt like you were scared that your husband wouldn't love you anymore. That must have been absolutely terrifying.
We might have to come back to her.
Her dog is barking. But one thing Alicia did say during the episode that I absolutely loved was that she's a new person, but she's still the same person that her husband fell in love with, and that her journey with vestibular dysfunction, as a result, made her stronger and wiser and a better advocate for herself. That I truly, truly love. It sounds like you learned a lot from that experience.
And I think our fuzzy friends help us along, don't they? So sometimes, your relationship with your furry friend brings you the most comfort. When she comes back to her microphone, we will let you talk about your being a newlywed and being a new mom.
Yes, I'm back. I think we're okay.
Okay.
Trying to contain this one a little bit. But yeah. So basically, my vestibular migraine hit me about a year into our marriage. And so before that, I was just like this fun-loving, like 30-year-old. I had a great job. We traveled a lot. Mine actually came on after a trip around Asia. And all I could think about, like when this was happening, we were supposed to go on a trip to Alaska and had to cancel that whole trip. And it was on a boat. And I was like, I already feel like I'm on a boat. I can't imagine being on a boat. And so I just remember feeling like so awful that my husband had to also cancel his trip. And I just kept saying, oh, you should just go. You should go without me. And I thought you never know, like this, you don't know if you're going to get over it or ever feel like normal again. Every day just comes and you're dizzy and it just feels like it's never going to end. And so you kind of start thinking, oh my gosh, is this going to be the rest of my life? Like, can I just never drive anymore? Can I never work anymore? Like, why would he want to stay with me? Like, why wouldn't he want to be with someone who can travel with him and go do these things? And so I honestly think that it was a huge motivating factor for me to feel better, because I knew that there were things I wanted to do, like eventually have a family. And so that's what really made me want to try anything and everything to get better. I did not realize that it would be such a long road. But I can say that it does get better. It just takes a lot of time, and you sort of learn patience throughout the process. And I think your significant other also learns to have patience with you, because you're having to communicate differently than you ever thought before and work through these things and be frustrated together. And they are frustrated at their situation, you're frustrated your situation, and often that comes out as kind of like a personal anger to each other, and it's just directed at the situation. So understanding that from each other can really help solve a lot of issues. And one of the best things we did was starting going to my appointments together, and it allowed him to see, oh my gosh, this is a real thing. And my doctor would talk to him and kind of explain things and what I was feeling. And because of that, like he was able to understand a little bit more, not fully. I don't think they can ever understand fully what we feel, but just to sort of have an understanding that, okay, this is a real thing. This is what people feel. This is how we're going to get through it. it just brought us a little bit closer together. And so after that, it's really helped. Like, we ended up having to go through infertility and IVF, and after going through vestibular disorder, that almost, I don't want to say easy, it wasn't easy, but we had done it. And so we learned how to support each other. And so these other hurdles that have come have seemed more manageable because we've been through something like a vestibular disorder. So in that sense, like, it can really help you in your relationship for the rest of your life, because you're learning how to conquer these battles together.
I think that comes through from everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just circle back to Nicole and ask her, how did this affect relationships with your friends and family that kind of led you to that realization that the people that matter in your life are the ones that will be there for you, they'll understand.
Yeah. So in my case, I have an incredibly supporting partner. He was there, from the beginning. He's a musician as well, so he understood like hearing loss, and he kind of guided me through. Like he explained to me that the frequencies that I'm not able to hear anymore, like he took it from a different perspective and tried to coach me through it without knowing anything about it. We were both reading about it. He was at every one of my appointments trying to make sense of it all. But my family didn't understand it, or friends. They had no idea. They thought it was something not as serious. So, they couldn't really, they weren't there with me. They weren't living in the same house. So it was very frustrating because I had hyperacusis, which, I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't receive phone calls. I had to text. My partner had to even ask me, like when he was going in the house, he had to text me because every type of sound would make me scream and cry. It was so debilitating. So I lived in the closet. Like I had to hide in the closet when he had to do laundry and things like that. So it was that extreme. And people couldn't understand that. They're like, but is that a condition? But how did that happen? Or what did you do to make, that it's like almost like you're guilty of it. Like you must have done something to create that. And that happened overnight, suddenly. So as much as they want to understand, it's just the questioning and the way they say things. I felt that the support wasn't there 100% from friends and family. Not that now they're very understanding. And I think like sending them videos of other people or how tinnitus is or how it feels, like showing them and guiding them through the process. But I feel like unless you live with a person and you see their pain and you know what they're happening, I think it's very hard for other people to understand what's going on. It's an invisible condition. You're not wearing a cast. You're not, like it's not like you broke your leg and you're wearing a cast or something like that. I would look normal, quote unquote, and they're like, I still don't understand like what's going on with you. So that was the most frustrating part, and it still is. I still have days where I'm out and I'm going out and I feel horrible, and I need to kind of explain people, hey, I need to go take a break. I can't filter sound so well. I have to, like decompress. I'll be back, and like it just sounds like an excuse, or you feel guilty because you have to even say that. So that's, I think, has been the most difficult part, trying to be social in a normal world where everything is loud and everything is going at a fast pace. So yeah, I'd say that was the most difficult thing.
I think that a lot of us define who we are and what our purpose is by what we do physically. And as I watch these, I've seen that you guys show us that there is a journey back to self and back to purpose and back to those relationships and things. Has your perspective on purpose changed? And how has it changed? Because I think now that you're saying you still have symptoms and things still bother you sometimes, but you still have purpose. What can you say about that, David, when you were talking about your role and purpose before and after your vestibular disorder?
Sure. So for my role, we had our life planned. I was in my early 50s when my vestibular disorder, my stroke hit. We had plans for retirement. We had plans on what we were doing in the future. Obviously, all those changed in an instant for me. So at first, it was very it was depressing. It was hard to manage because both my wife and I had our expectations at one level and we're at another level. And then as we moved forward in this journey, we looked at it and said, okay, so this may have not been my purpose in life to finish my life as a corporate executive. Maybe my purpose in life was to finish my life and my career as somebody that is helping others. And once we embraced that and said, okay, so now we're going to help others and help them overcome what I've already done. So what's happened to me has happened. There's nothing we can do to change that, but there is ways to educate other people, to inform them how we can be preventive of, especially in my case, of stroke, or how we can, once we get a vestibular disorder, how can we cope? What kinds of things can we use to help us get along our days? I was talking to Danielle just before we got on here, and one of our big family things was Disney World, and we love to go to Disney World every year. But you guys can imagine, as a vestibular patient, we tried it about a year after I had my vestibular disorder and my stroke, and it was very difficult for me, hard. I used a chair, either a wheelchair or an accessibility device, and it's been 8 years since my stroke and my vestibular disorder. And I was just telling Danielle, just this past Saturday, my wife and I went to, because we now live in Florida, so we are going to Disney World as much as possible. I went to Disney World for the first time all day without an assisted device, and I made it through. So a lot of hard work. It didn't come overnight. I didn't do it like I wanted to in 3 weeks after I had my vestibular disorder, but a lot of hard work, a lot of prep, a lot of education went into that. And I think if people have enough determination, I think you can do pretty much anything that you want to. So your purpose in life, you may have had a purpose in your life, but sometimes there is a greater purpose in life that needs to be done. And that's how I sense my life, is I had a greater purpose that needed to be done. And somehow I got picked. So here we are.
Wow. That's so beautifully said.
There's definitely purpose in life, and then there's also celebrating the small wins. And David, that's a huge win to be able to go to an amusement park and make it all day with a vestibular disorder. I mean, that is rough. Just going to the grocery store, I think, is tough for some. Alicia, do you have any of those small wins that you can share of your vestibular team, comparing yourself where you were in the beginning to where you are now? Like, what's something you are back to doing that you never thought you'd be able to do again?
Well, it's just really interesting David said that, because my first trip after my vestibular disorder was Las Vegas, and that was like the equivalent of Disney World. It was just like way too much. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to travel again. But I mean, ever since, like, a big win for me was small wins. Sometimes that was just taking a longer walk, like walking down the sidewalk and not tripping on the sidewalk was a small win for me back in the day. And then some of my bigger wins, I think probably a year or two in my vestibular disorder, was going on our first international flight. So that was a big hurdle for me mentally, because I had originally, when I was seeing doctors that didn't know what was going on with me, they had suggested that it was a problem that the airplane had caused my vestibular disorder, and which wasn't true at all. But it was still a fear for me that I had to get over and worry about it triggering myself before a vacation. And so my first international trip was great, and we went to Spain, which was ideal because you have siestas. So it was nice to go to a place that accepted napping when
That's
you
a
have
really
a
good point.
vestibular disorder. So that,
I
you
like
know,
that.
small wins for me would have been just cooking dinner at night, and it's nice to mix in the two small wins with the big wins.
Nicole, do you have any small or big wins to share?
I do. I have many. Yes. Actually, I went through a time where I was not like I couldn't get out of bed. So for me, a big win was going back to walking. I had to go through vestibular retraining therapy because I couldn't walk. Like the minute I would put the foot on the floor, I would fall, either because of a vertigo attack or because I couldn't really measure the distance. And for me, that was, I couldn't drive, I couldn't work, I couldn't see people, I couldn't talk to people. So getting back to, I think my big first win was when I actually was able to celebrate my birthday with my family again and with friends, and they saw me again, and I was able to have a conversation wearing my filtered musician earplugs, that help me when I'm in loud places. So that was a big thing. Of course, the next day I felt a little not so great, but the fact that I was able to get out there and do something and not be home, and that was incredibly a good win. And I think going back to the purpose question, I think that has been my biggest win. I've always been an artist, but I didn't know why. And now that I'm able to paint because I want to say and I want to tell my story, now I kind of say, okay, well, this is why I paint. This is why I'm able to communicate. This is the way maybe I couldn't communicate before through a conversation on the phone or something. But then by doing my art, I really found my purpose. It's not really painting. It's helping others with my testimony in any way or shape or form. If that means that I could help one person by telling them what I did or kind of walking them through the process, that's a big win for me. And I think it's the same way. So, like many of the people I got support were online. So it's my way of giving back in the same way. So that's one of my biggest wins.
You guys are such an encouragement to everybody, and how fortunate you are to have found purpose. So many of us go through life looking for purpose, and the fact that you found yours, I think is tremendous, and it comes through, and everybody is benefits from you having found that. And it's interesting because we've talked about the vestibular disorder. We say 9 vestibular warriors won't be defined by their dizziness. While it doesn't define your vestibular disorder doesn't define you, it certainly did present a situation that you had to either give into or let it change you. And I think it's done that for everybody. I don't know if that prompts you to want to comment, but it's that interesting thing. Would you say that it defined you, or it doesn't define you and it just gave you an impetus to change?
I think at the beginning, maybe I thought I was gonna be with this, like a label, but then I said, why, I'm more than this. And it took me, I'm not gonna say it was easy. I still have my days where I feel like I'm like, wow, am I back there? Like I'm not 100% again. Am I going back into this dark moment? But no, I think it teaches you to push through and then know that you're not just that you're able to do many other things or adjust and adapt. And that makes us so stronger and resilient. I mean, I look back and I'm like, I'm not the same person. I'm way stronger than that. So yeah, that makes me smile, even if I'm having a horrible day. Or someone reminds me of that. If I'm having a bad day, like, well, look at how far what you have accomplished, or the fact that you were not able to even drive or do anything, look at you today. So that's already a win. Or like David going back to a place where he wanted to go and not being able to, or it's a big win. We have to look back and say, we have really walked that walk and we've come, the other side, just a better person.
David, what were you going to say to that? Go ahead, Alicia.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it makes you appreciate the little things so much more from driving. Like, I never appreciated driving before. I mean, or walking down the street, like who takes joy in that sort of thing? But becomes these things, that these little things that you took for granted before become, you know, big things to you again. And it sort of makes life a little more exciting in a way, because you appreciate those small things that you maybe took for granted before.
Absolutely. David.
Yeah, I agree with both Alicia and Nicole. At first, I didn't really want it to define me, and then I went to this point where it's like, okay, it's not defining me, but then I think it's kind of I've come all the way full circle, where my life is being defined by my vestibular disorder. Because a lot of people on my social media, a lot of people in my town know me as not David sometimes, but David, the person that has a dizziness, because I post so much and I educate people on social media. So even though I am still maybe defined by dizziness or vestibular person, it's defined, I think, in a good way, because now people are reaching out to me, especially the ones that are new, and asking, how do you do this? You're 8 years in. How do you continue life? How do you adapt? So I've come full circle. At first, I didn't want anything to do with it.
Right.
I wanted to be normal again, like everybody says. I wanted to get my old job back. I wanted all the stuff that happened before. But then once I embraced it, and I circled all the way back, and now I'm actually the person known for that now.
Let's tell people how they can get a hold of you, David. We have a banner for each of you. So if you want to communicate with David, tell him about you on Instagram and then your Facebook group.
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media channels. Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I don't know if I have my handle there, but the Facebook group, we welcome anyone that's a vestibular patient, a professional, a family member. All those people are invited to our Facebook group. We have thousands of, probably 17 or 18,000 people from around the world that join us every single day, and they're there to help other vestibular patients. So even though it's not where you have a face-to-face support group, a lot of times there's going to be at least somebody on there at all hours of the day, all around the world, because we have so many members from all around the world that it will act just like a regular support group. You'll have people on there. If you go on there at 2:00 in the morning your time, I can almost guarantee there'll be other people on there that are having the same issues as you, and are there to help you. So come join us. We love to have everybody, patients, family, and professionals.
That's wonderful. Let's do the shout out to how people can reach you. Nicole, you next.
Sure. I think mostly on Instagram, and of course on my website, and NicoleCure.com. I have a blog there, and I did this because I got also, like, I guess David and Alicia, like, questions, and you kind of often wanted to help and send like paragraphs of information, and like, I know sometimes it was not possible. So I said, why not, do a blog and tell the story so that, I can provide some information. And also it was a way for me to keep track of everything. At the beginning, when you're going to many doctor's appointments and you're getting so many testing done, you don't even remember what's what. So it was a journal. So, and then on Instagram at NicoleCure_art, and that's where I am most of the time. I'm super open about the conditions that I've had to experience. I'm open about where I get treatments, what do I do, how do I cope, in the studio, outside the studio. My life is just an open book in a way, because I want to be able to show that, yes, some days are amazing and some days are not. And then that's how it is. You go through this roller coaster of emotions, and sometimes it's good because people think like, are you like all recovered? I see you doing this and that. I'm like, no, I'm not 100% recovered, but I'm living my life, because you can't stay there in a room. So it's a way of showing people there's hope, and there's definitely, you can get to a point where it's manageable and you will learn how to manage your symptoms. It's just a matter of time and having patience, because it does take a while. And that's where you can find me. So if you ever want to chat or ask me a question, ask away.
Thank you so much. Now, Alicia, you are known for your advocacy for the vestibular community in that you have a passion for cooking. So the Dizzy Cook is what a lot of people know you by. Tell the audience about where they can find you and what kind of things you've done with your journey.
Yeah, so the Dizzy Cook was really born because I had left my job. I could no longer do it. I was in watch design, and I couldn't look at the computer a long time. I couldn't keep up with their demands, and so they weren't very supportive either. So I kind of spent a lot of time at home cooking, and I always loved cooking and developing recipes, and it just sort of grew into recipes that were great on a migraine diet. They also work for low sodium. So I get a lot of people with Meniere's as well coming to visit, or a lot of crossover with vestibular migraine. So I volunteer a lot for organizations like Vita and Miles for Migraine. But you can get in touch with me on Instagram is probably the place I respond the most, but I'm also on Facebook. I have a recipe chat group that helps people with their cooking questions. And then I also post videos to YouTube about my vestibular journey, as well as like tips and tricks. And then I'm also on Twitter as well. So everything's usually under the Dizzy Cook. So if you search for that on any medium, you can probably find me. But if you have messages, I typically respond best through Instagram.
I have to say that everybody, that you guys have put so much work into those outlets that you've created to kind of document your journey, but also support those suffering from similar symptoms. But you also support the clinicians who utilize your sites to guide their patients to better resources. So, it's also there for families and friends and caregivers of people with vestibular dysfunction, because what you guys put out there is so useful for people who don't quite understand, how to navigate a life with vestibular dysfunction. So like Alicia, I actually bought your cookbook and use it all the time, but I send patients to your website. And Nicole, I love your art and then your blogs that you've been putting out there too, chronicling. All the different diagnoses that you received over time, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And David, all of the time that you put into the support group to create a nice, safe, resourceful environment for people to go to, that's all so important. And although I know your vestibular dysfunction doesn't define your life, it's almost redefined in a different way, giving you purpose to celebrating the small wins and the positive things that you can get out of this experience. So the fact that you guys took a really bad situation and turned it around to be helpful to the vestibular community is huge. And we are so grateful for it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are. Let's tell people where they can see Life Rebalanced Chronicles. So on vestibular.org, on the Vita's website, we have a landing page. So you can find it there, where you can click on the videos that have been released so far. Hey, so far, guys, which one, do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite segment of the 4 we've seen? Mind, body, spirit, relationships.
I think spirit.
Yeah.
So far.
I think the most moving one is, as I said that my wife was on the couch crying too, was our relationships too. So
they get heavier, I think. You
Yeah.
scratch the surface with body rebalance, and it's sort of like, okay, we're all familiar with how it feels because you guys are here in this community. But what really, really hits us is as you dive deeper and deeper and deeper. So people, stay tuned, watch again, share these videos. We have self rebalanced and life rebalanced remaining. These will be useful, like Danielle said, to clinicians and family members and caregivers for just years and years to come. They are timeless. Your stories are timeless, and they are important as brave vestibular warriors that you are, redefining your life because of your vestibular challenge, and giving so much of yourself to make others feel a part of this community. Know that the Vestibular Disorders Association is a nonprofit organization, and while none of this substitutes for medical care, we do really, really depend on and need your continued support. So go to the Vestibular Disorders Association, become involved, see David on his online support group. There are other online support groups and some in-person groups. Let us be your resource. Find your family. Look what a great vestibular family this is, with all of these cast members that we have that we've met through these Facebook Lives. I'm privileged to know you. I knew that I had the best job in the world to care for and guide you guys all through your vestibular journey as a vestibular physical therapist, but the resilience and the character of each of you inspires me. So
thank you. Can I say one thing to end this before?
Of course.
Okay, so we've seen all the 9 casts and all the patients in here, and I just want to give props to the professionals that stand behind us, because a lot of times they don't get the accolades. We hear a lot of negative things about professionals, but Danielle and Kathleen are 2 of the professionals that stand 110% behind vestibular patients. And for me, I appreciate that, and thank you guys for your work and dedication.
Well,
yeah, I want to say something too. I love the enthusiasm and the research you put behind everything that you guys do, because that means a lot to us, the patients. Like when we see that you really care, it's just not something cold. Like we know that you care, and that's, like David said, like, thank you for that, because you don't get all the recognition behind the scenes, but you do so much. So because of that, we find resources, because of PETA, because of people like you. We really get in a better place. We can get the right resources.
Yeah,
well,
we
Danielle,
need more
I know
like you.
Thank you. Danielle, I know you agree, as do anybody I've ever met who works in this niche of neurovestibular medicine and therapy. It's a real calling and an absolute privilege. I think we all have become what Danielle, I think, coined the phrase. What's your phrase of what we are when we love vestibular medicine?
We are vestibuloholics. We are truly helping those with vestibular dysfunction.
We are. So it is our obsession that we live for, and we live to see your bodies and minds, hearts and spirits transformed in whatever way possible, even when we can't take away all the suffering and the struggle. But it's made you guys amazing people, and the encouragement for everyone out there: don't give up, keep looking for answers, find your community of support, and continue to share these videos. Any other last comments from anybody? This has been so great. Any last comments?
Just thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say, VITA has done so much more in the last year with great programming and doing these live interviews and having the Life Rebalanced Chronicles, which is all put together by volunteers. So if you found that VITA has helped you in any way, please don't hesitate to find some way that you can reach out and volunteer. Your own special skills and knowledge and journey can be very unique and helpful to VITA in helping others as well. So be sure to check out the website. Be sure to look into volunteer opportunities if you're even remotely interested. You'd be more than welcome by our community.
Thank you. We'll see everybody next time. Go to vestibular.org for more videos like this one. Also there, you'll find information, support, and encouragement to help you find your journey back to balance.